welcome everyone. And I did want to take a minute to, I'm sure everybody by now knows, it was coincidental that we were having Chick-fil-A today, but Truett Cathy's funeral is also today. And he was obviously an incredible Georgian and has done a tremendous amount of work for our state, as has his family. So let's just say a moment of thanks for all that Truett Cathy was to our state. But today's meeting format is a little bit different. Our regular business meeting will be a little bit shorter because at the end of the meeting, we will all be adjourning. You will be going on your separate ways to your individual meetings, and the regular meeting will be through at that point. But in preparation for those individualized meetings, we wanted to give you an update on what's been happening since Bobby has stepped in as interim director. I think everyone in this room knows Bobby Cagle. But there's been some really great stuff that Bobby's been doing. He's obviously been drinking from a fire hose at the same time, but has been able to make some very positive strides in a relatively short amount of time. And we wanted to have Bobby here today to update you on some of the good news, as well as some of the challenges that continue to face DFAC. So thank you, Bobby, for taking time to be here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. It's good to be with you again. And do want to say to begin with how much I appreciate the fact that you're taking time to do this. I can personally think of no other work that's more important. I'm a little bit biased in that regard, but I do want to thank you for that, and I hope that the information I provide is helpful. And please feel free to stop me anywhere in the presentation and ask questions, although I've reserved a period at the end for question and answer as well. Not advancing. Can you advance for me?
Okay. I'm gonna have to have some help.
I think my batteries went dead.
Oh, again?
Yeah. So first wanted to give you an update on data. One of the things that I know from having worked in this field for quite some time is that individual anecdotal information is very important, but more important for running a system, you have to have an understanding of what the data tells you. It is not a be-all, end-all, but it is something that I find very important and really start every conversation with. The beginning of the system, of course, is our intake, and this is a chart that represents the intake wait times. You can see from our last meeting that the intake wait times have remained very low. They run in the 8-second range. I would tell you in all transparency that we did have an instance last weekend where call times went up to about 5 minutes. That was a technology glitch where our calls were sent to all but one queue. And so it reduced the number of people available to take calls, but that was discovered and corrected very quickly. And we have maintained the average wait time very low. The caseload averages per region, this is something that we watch very closely. As you are aware, last time we talked, this was at 21.8 on average. This is the average caseload per caseworker in these regions, and you can see that there are pretty widely varying caseloads depending on where you are. Now let me explain to you why that is. We've really been focused on trying to get additional staff into regions 13 and 15 in particular, because that's where we have our highest turnover and we have the most cases coming in, which is a very difficult combination together. You'll see the line there. That's the red line is indicative of the governor's goal by 2017 to have us at 1 to 15 cases per caseworker, which is getting to the national standards. The other thing that I'm sure everyone here knows is that Georgia is primarily a rural state. And so when you're doing social work and handling cases, There are specific challenges that are related to working in urban settings, specific challenges that are related to working in rural settings. In the urban settings, it's oftentimes traffic. As I worked with the social worker in Gwinnett County early on, one Saturday, we dealt with traffic all day long, and we were limited in the number of contacts that we could make with families because of that. And that was with me sitting over there navigating on my iPhone because she had a flip phone and did not have capability to get navigation guidance. And so I was able to help her, but it still limited what we could do. The limitation in rural areas is around distance traveled. And so you may travel in some counties up to an hour before you can get from one visit to another. And so there are unique challenges, both urban and rural. The good news about these caseloads is that they're coming down. The overall average statewide is 21.9. That's a 0.7 case per worker drop. What you need to know about this is that the 175 caseworkers that were authorized in the last budget and the 103 caseworkers that were authorized by the governor outside the normal budget process recently are almost all filled. The positions primarily that we're recruiting for now are backfills of turnover, and so that remains a challenge for us. What we're doing in the counties that have staffing challenges is to have hiring fairs. We have perfected a process where we actually do on-site conditional hiring. So we will interview the person, look at their credentials, and evaluate them for appropriateness for the job, and offer them conditionally a job based conditioned upon getting a clean background check and reference checks. We did that most recently in Gwinnett County and hired 10 in one day. That's good news. The other part of this, of course, is once you hire a person, unless some odd reason they have already been through our training series, they have to go through training. The entire process to get somebody up and running and fully functional as a caseworker typically runs about a year. So it is positive that we got folks coming in, but know that there's a lag time when you're looking at getting people up and functioning. Sure.
A question about that. Or at least, could you speak to your insights and sort of the importance of understanding not just caseload numbers, but the mix of cases for any one worker? And do you have any perspective on that, perspective of numbers?
Honestly, we have been so focused on safety issues that I've not drilled down on this, but I can tell you my personal experience with the mix of type of cases. So the national literature, if you look at it, tells you that investigations caseloads need to be smaller than the family support caseloads or family preservation. And then the family preservation caseloads, about 12, need to be smaller than the foster care caseloads, which can be about 17. So you can see that the governor's goal of 1 to 15 is actually an average of those. The other thing that you need to know about each case is that they all vary. So if a family has one child, that is one level of difficulty. Every additional child in that family is an additional level of difficulty because you have to repeat interviews, you have to repeat getting of records and collateral contacts that are specific to that child. So that is a constant, should be a constant focus of the supervisor and the administrators, trying to assure that each individual worker has an appropriate mix and balance those caseloads as that goes on. This is a report on the impact of CPS intake. As you will recall, in October of 2013, we moved to a 24/7 call center that expanded the capability to receive reports in many different ways, not the least of which is after hours, weekends, and holidays. You can see the trend line, the diagonal straight line that runs from August of 2013 through August of 2014. The 2013 data is also delineated by the dotted green line, and then a yellow line, on the bottom, and the dotted green line on top is the 2014 comparative data. What you'll see there is that we took in excess of 2,700 more reports in August of 14 than we did in August of 13, and that's a 39% increase. So part of what we're dealing with here is a issue of volume in addition to a shortage of staff, which is a increasingly complex and difficult problem. This is an issue also that I've been focused on since day one. The first piece of data that I asked for was overdue investigations, because every day an investigation is overdue, there's increased risk to a child or potential for risk. We have been looking at this on a regular basis, and actually there are efforts that are going on prior to my arriving. We did institute mandatory paid overtime for staff. At that point in time, I think went into effect on July 24th, and you can see that there's a pretty marked drop there. It's actually June 24th. Since that time, we've seen a 61% reduction in overdue cases. We're still having problems in two of our regions in particular, and that's Region 15, which encompasses Gwinnett and Cobb counties. That's our biggest area of difficulty. Followed by Region 13, which is Clayton County, Rockdale County, and Henry County. So we are doing some special things in those areas. We have reduced the mandatory pay to overtime in a statewide sense, but have focused that on the areas that are having the greatest deal of difficulty with overdue cases. So we're continuing that. We have designated staff from each region that will be serving in those regions temporarily. And in addition, we are hiring part-time retired staff as well as using PRN or as-needed staff from staffing companies. This is in response to a question I think that Senator Miller asked the last time we were talking about these issues. So you see all the reports that come in and you wonder what the disposition of those are. So when you get a report, you either accept it for investigation or you say that it is not something that rises to the level of abuse or neglect, and you do not investigate that. You look at from August of 2011, this is right after the beginning of the governor's term. We were accepting about 74.6% of all reports that came in, either as an investigation or family support case. Currently, we are accepting 78% of cases that come through that line. So we're relatively consistent. There has been an increase, and this really leads me to ask further questions, which I cannot answer today, about are we unnecessarily screening some cases in that we don't need to. The implication there is twofold. If you screen a case in for investigation or family support that does not rise to the level of maltreatment, what you have done is unnecessarily subject a family to the intrusion of the state in their family's life. The other thing that you do is that you tax resources that are already scarce. And so we want to be certain that we're looking at these cases with a good lens to assure that we're allocating resources to those cases that actually need it and not intervening in families' lives that don't need our assistance.
Bobby?
Yes.
How do those numbers compare to the other states around the percentages? Like is 74% really pretty average? Is 78 really high? Or?
I haven't looked at this comparatively in a while. Heather, my experience in North Carolina was about the same. We were around 70% acceptance rates. I think this also is an indicator that is very much impacted by publicity around cases that have gone badly wrong. You have workers that see the coverage around this, have a great deal of concern themselves around assuring that children are safe. And so oftentimes this causes a thumb on the scale toward accepting investigations when otherwise we might not. So we're looking at that and we'll continue to look at that. I think because of the difference between states also and what they accept and do not accept, what their state law calls for, to compare and rely on comparisons from state to state probably is not the best way to look at it. So looking historically, making sure that we're screening these correctly is probably the best way to go about it.